Israel proceeded to destroy the very heart of Iran's missile complexes, including their most critical and dangerous sites, using precision-guided heavy bombs earlier today. This specific type of bomb was alluded to by the Israeli Ministry of Defense yesterday evening as they explicitly discussed the involvement of women in the ongoing Israeli aerial operations targeting Iranian territory. However, simultaneously, this particular wing of the fighter aircraft became apparent along with a number of highly conspicuous and attention-worthy bombs. And naturally, concerning the wing of this aircraft, it is identical to the Israeli F-16I Superjet. This particular wing, in fact, is completely identical to the one we observe right here on this very plane. These are among the initial observations we've made. However, another crucial and significant point to note is that we are looking at air-to-air missiles. But most importantly, now this particular bomb appears entirely different, given that this F-16 jet is clearly targeting buildings, and it's very obvious these are not ordinary. The specific bomb we observe here is identified as a GBU-38. This bomb is one of those weighing up to 500 pounds, a type of bomb considered quite heavy, but also at the same time it is equipped with the advanced JDAM guidance system. This is precisely what makes this particular bomb intelligent when it targets its objectives. It strikes fixed targets, specifically complexes, warehouses, weapon storage facilities, and command centers. It is devastating and extremely destructive. What is particularly noteworthy is that following this image and this display in the early morning hours, the Israeli Air Force proceeded to launch severe strikes today against numerous locations situated deep within Iranian territory, with a particular focus on Tehran, in addition to other significant points located to the east and northeast of the Iranian capital, Tehran. These points illustrate that we faced no ordinary strikes. They struck weapon and missile sites and depots. It's believed GBU-38I, the 8 bombs were used in this attack we see here. And of course, if we try to understand this particular region more extensively and in greater detail, you'll notice we're first facing tall white buildings scattered between mountains and elevated areas. And here you'll notice a first building, a second, a third, and a football field. You'll also observe this mountain with its distinct markings that will prove very useful for us in identifying this specific region. And you'll notice the shape of the highlands here is quite unique and very distinctive. Following these prominent highlands, we then encounter these explosions, a portion of which is clearly visible in this particular form. Consequently, if we refer to the satellite imagery, this precise point is situated to the northeast of the Iranian capital, Tehran, at a distance of merely 18 kilometers. And these are the structures that align perfectly with the buildings we observed. White-colored buildings are sparsely distributed across the mountains and elevated terrain with an angle that precisely corresponds to our earlier observations. And this particular angle, it specifically appears in conjunction with this very square. From this vantage point, as you can clearly observe, it aligns perfectly with what we just witnessed a moment ago. Consequently, you'll distinctly see the first building, then the second, and finally the third. And this right here is the stadium itself. So as you can see, everything is completely identical. And over here, these are the mountains, or rather the elevated highlands. Therefore, the explosions and the Israeli strikes specifically occurred at this very location. What exactly is coming here and what exactly is located at this site? If we take a somewhat elevated vantage point to clearly direct our satellite towards it now, you will clearly observe that we are facing numerous missile complexes, and this particular complex is the Qujir complex, which has been sanctioned by Europe and by the United States of America. Israel focused its attacks on this particular area, targeting a number of significant ballistic missile storage facilities. It of course destroyed them during the 12-day war. Like this specific point we observed, or even at this very location, it struck numerous depots. If we look at the image after the strikes, we can observe extensive destruction. However, the Iranian side is attempting to reconstruct its missile program and these specific warehouses. Consequently, the strikes were extremely significant and impactful. It appears that one of the explosions occurred precisely at this location, suggesting that not only missiles are being manufactured here, but also experts involved in the missile program are being targeted in this particular area, as they themselves are considered objectives. Without these experts, it would be very difficult for Iran to develop its missiles or even critical parts of those missiles. And it also appears that the western side was also struck from these very complexes. In general, when we compare this particular shot with this image, you'll notice that there are almost 3 important parts. It had been struck in this area, and specifically targeted by the Israeli side to disable this time the Qujir complex, consequently disrupting the production process of ballistic missiles, which plays a crucial role for the Iranian side in carrying out attacks against Israel and the entire region. And these strikes are occurring after Israel successfully managed to open the route and the airspace by Shina Ad Daili by striking many of the defensive systems. which had been prevalent in Tehran, in the areas surrounding Tehran, within these Western territories, were able to. During this war and the Lion's Roar operation, Israel has been able to fly its warplanes and acquire this crucial flexibility. As a result, it has moved into this specific area, which lies approximately in this particular direction, as we can clearly observe and as we are currently discussing. Consequently, they now possess a significant degree of freedom to carry out strikes against such critical complexes, a capability that will effectively prevent Iran from manufacturing any further missiles in the foreseeable future. Israel, at the same time, they also didn't waste any time. Instead, it utilized the routes it opened towards Isfahan to execute extremely large strikes. It appears that guided bombs were specifically used, which might be smaller and lighter than the GBU-38 bombs. The missile base located in Isfahan was also heavily struck today, and note this missile base situated northwest of Isfahan. If we were to get closer to this important missile base in Shai'a, any satellite updates would clearly show you how the missile platforms are precisely hit between the mountains. Here, at this very spot, a remarkably clear satellite image distinctly shows you that two specific points were struck. These are, in fact, identified as critical points and missile launch platforms. If we zoom in closer, you will undoubtedly notice that these platforms are exceptionally clear, revealing the precise nature of the targeting. Furthermore, it is also absolutely essential to pay very close attention to the various entry points. Please note that the entrance was not struck by the Israeli side or even by the United States of America. This time they are not hitting the mountain entrances at all. They are monitoring the launch platforms, and they want these platforms to emerge in the specific manner we witness here for the missile's launch. Subsequently, they then smuggle these platforms away, because merely striking the entry points does not fully resolve the underlying problem. The platforms and the missiles themselves always remain readily available. Consequently, there is an extremely significant focus placed on these platforms specifically for their complete destruction, and it has been completely destroyed. So regardless of the number of missiles you might possess, it simply won't be enough for you to launch any attacks against American interests or even against Israel or the nations of the broader region. In addition to all of that, this particular base was also very significantly impacted and struck. We observed, for instance, in the early hours of the morning, a massive amount of smoke was clearly visible emanating from this particular area, resulting from the incessant bombardment of missile platforms. Notice how this image clearly illustrates several precise strikes, indicating that they intentionally allowed these platforms to be set up, only to continuously strike them. Furthermore, the exact same tactic was employed in Hajiabad by the United States of America. Hajiabad is located north of Bandar Abbas, or the Strait of Hormuz. It is also considered one of the bases from which missiles or even drones are launched. Note that this is a crucial area on the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran is currently closing, and this is precisely the region that was struck by the United States of America. And notice that we are looking at these points which have been marked in black. Observe, these are the specific points. This is the first point, and then the second and the third. You'll also notice simultaneously that these gates are open and present. Let's zoom in a bit on this image, and you'll clearly see how these gates were not hit, but rather the platforms were. This is an important issue involving a significant draining process. It clarifies that what the American president is talking about is very clear. It's about dismantling missile capabilities and completely depleting them, and to ensure that there are no potential future risks from Iran concerning this specific matter. But also by focusing on the nature of some of the existing missile platforms on the Iranian side, if we examine them closely, this particular platform appears to be of that very type. These are among the platforms that outwardly resemble civilian trucks, but ultimately they are specifically designed to launch such missiles. And it's very clear that we are dealing with naval missiles that could be employed against the American Navy, against the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, or even against oil ships, tankers, and other vessels that Iran also consistently targets. Consequently, yes, the United States Central Command today released these video clips showing the targeting of this specific type of trucks. The United States has already begun to strike every single thing, and what remains of platforms, whether hidden, unhidden, or clearly visible, all of them have started to be targeted by Central Command with the aim of gradually eliminating these capabilities while simultaneously increasing pressure on the Iranian regime in order to completely destroy this program. You can observe that the United States has concentrated its military operations in this region, specifically in the Arabian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman, focusing on all these critical points from which radars, missile capabilities, and also the headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, their command centers, and various other installations were struck. It is evident that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is enduring a tremendous and significant assault, particularly at the hands of the United States Navy, We also observed that Bandar Abbas was set ablaze and a significant number of ships were sunk, specifically 11 vessels. Just yesterday, official statements were issued by the United States Central Command. It was the American military itself that confirmed this particular incident. Furthermore, recent satellite imagery clearly illustrates how these ships were entirely submerged and completely destroyed by the actions of U.S. Central Command. And Shappa, some of the initial images of the targeting showed these vessels, which are considered quite limited for the Iranian side, and therefore there are currently no ships in the Gulf of Oman belonging to the Iranian regime, and what it controls in the Strait of Hormuz is merely fire control at present. The United States already possesses the capability to carry out further attacks and escalation. Today there were strikes on the Natanz nuclear facility, which is considered one of the most crucial and important installations. And this indicates to you that the type of dismantling of nuclear facilities has already begun, and we have entered a phase of dismantling what remains of the nuclear capabilities. There's also a massive dismantling of missile capabilities. Consequently, this clearly shows you that there is a desire to continuously weaken missile launches against the allies of the United States, against US sites, against Israel, and even against other critical points. Also, the destruction of factories, warehouses, and complexes where missiles are manufactured, such as the Qojir complex that we primarily discussed. This is fundamentally aimed at rendering Iran now without any missile capabilities, without nuclear capabilities, and even without defensive capabilities, which would then allow for a change of regime later on in conjunction with a number of plans. Essentially, this matter has been observed by several Israeli sources like Israel Radar and others, which pointed out that the speed of missile launches and Iran's missile capabilities have significantly decreased. And today marks the 4th day of these ongoing military operations against Iran. Compared to the first 3 days, the conditions were quite different now. The number of rockets being launched has significantly decreased, and also the interval between each wave of rockets has started to become progressively longer due to the concentrated strikes on their missile capabilities and their launch platforms at the same time. The United States has already begun preparing for military operations and an escalation far greater than what is currently ongoing against the Iranian regime. This was evident as all these refueling aircraft were seen flying towards Europe and subsequently from Europe into the Middle East region. Indeed, all these aircraft were observed making their way towards the Middle East throughout the last 24 hours. It has been reported that one of the fighter aircraft, or rather one of the specific types of fighter jets that has recently arrived in the region, is a complete squadron of F-35 stealth aircraft. This therefore represents a significant addition to all the stealth warplanes that have been deployed and spread across the region alongside the F-22 Raptors and other similar advanced capabilities, of course. Details emerged from a key correspondent at American CNN explaining that a high-level US official informed him that the United States is preparing for a significant increase in attacks on Iran within the next 24 hours. Therefore, the coming hours will mark the beginning of operations that could be quite different, considering this Iranian retreat and, of course, this significant American military buildup. And this is due to several important reasons. This is because the Iranian side is now striking all of these specific regions. It is striking absolutely everything that is present there. When we speak about the Arabian Gulf, these strikes have become extremely dangerous for the entire Gulf region. It's no longer just about targeting, for example, airports or American military bases and other such facilities. No, not at all. They have now started attacking American embassies, precisely as we saw happen today in Saudi Arabia with these drone strikes. And furthermore, there are also significant threats being made against the American embassy in Amman. There's been a significant evacuation of both American and Israeli embassies across the entire region, generally speaking, due to these escalating threats. This is because Iran has clearly raised the level of its attacks, and they've now begun targeting diplomatic sites rather than just focusing solely on military installations. Furthermore, they've also started striking critical facilities and fuel storage depots belonging to these specific nations. For instance, today in Fujairah, in Al-Karata, United Arab Emirates, we observed that this fuel depot was struck. Also in Duqm, Sultanate of Oman, which has always stood with the Iranian side and tried to resolve issues between Iran and the West, it is continuously being targeted. This drone, as we speak today, hit this very depot, and there is absolutely no stopping it. In addition to that, there are 6 ships that Iran attacked in this manner at these specific points. They are closing the Strait of Hormuz, and consequently, there is a clear desire to raise oil prices. The price of a barrel of oil has already begun to gradually increase under these circumstances. The United States needs to escalate in order to regain control and protect international navigation in this region, because energy flows are not only important but absolutely vital, not just for the Middle East region or even the allies of the United States, but for the entire world. Also, the Iranian side itself is a primary cause for the impending escalation against Iran, which could potentially transform into a significant alliance originating from Europe or even the broader Arabian Gulf region. Also witnessing an Iranian escalation of tensions directed towards Cyprus. The attacks against Cyprus have been continuing even up to this very day, specifically targeting the Akrotiri airbase, where British forces are currently stationed. Iran is not the only one involved in these attacks. Lebanese Hezbollah is also launching its own assaults on Cyprus. And this is precisely the reason that has compelled three significant and influential nations, namely the United Kingdom, Greece, and France as well, to deploy and send forth a powerful naval frigate, advanced fighter aircraft, and sophisticated anti-drone defense systems. Advanced anti-missile defense systems have all been deployed throughout this region to protect Cyprus, because we're talking about a country that is considered a vital part of the European Union and also a highly strategic location for the British Army in general to maintain stability in this entire region. Now, it was also being targeted by Hezbollah as well as by the Iranian regime. What's noteworthy is that US President Donald Trump stated the Iranian side, after all these attacks, reached out to him and said, Dakilak, now let's negotiate after all that occurred and sit at the table. But he say that the defense systems were destroyed, the Air Force was destroyed, the Navy was destroyed. He meant the Navy, the air defenses, and all of Iran's aerial capabilities were completely annihilated. In addition, the command itself was entirely destroyed and struck. Therefore, he said he would not negotiate and would continue because things have escalated to the highest levels and there is no way back to negotiation. What's interesting is what was published on the American Axios website, which reported that US President Donald Trump called the Kurdish leadership in Iraq's Kurdistan region, and what Axios revealed, as it claimed, of course, that he discussed an issue and hinted at the matter of benefit among the Iranian Kurdish opposition parties that are based in the Kurdistan region, and which Iran has consistently targeted the locations of these groups, whether those sites are in Erbil or Sulaymaniyah across the region, claiming that these parties pose a significant threat to its national security. But these parties, and in a very interesting manner, just 6 days before the commencement of this war, they had already formed an alliance together and had agreed upon all the fundamental principles against the Iranian side, as was clearly evident on the 22nd of February. Then on the 28th of February, the Israeli-American military operations began. And then this, of course, is due to a very important reason, because these parties enjoy significant popularity throughout all these regions, such as the Iranian Kurdistan Democratic Party, or Komala, or even the Party of Free Life. And all these parties that possess such significant popularity in these specific regions, which they could potentially dominate. For instance, West Azerbaijan, Kermanshah, Sanandaj, which is specifically Kurdistan province, and also Mahabad. Consequently, all these areas are strategically positioned, leading directly towards Tehran. It's important to note that if Iran loses control of these areas, Tehran would face a very serious threat, especially with all the attacks we are definitely talking about. And here we return to the issue of opening the road that Israel undertook. The news now indicates that the Israeli Air Force is not only striking deep within the territory, but has also begun targeting border points or specific locations that are under the control of the Iranian border guard. They began striking it very intensively, specifically in this northwestern region of Iran. This is done in order to provide an opportunity for these Iranian Kurdish opposition parties, naturally, for them to enter this region and to exploit the current situation, especially since these are areas where demonstrations have previously erupted, and consequently this will gradually lead to a surge and an increase in momentum. The demonstrations taking place in Tehran might also exploit these conditions to quickly and permanently change the regime. Tehran is a serious matter, losing control of the borders. So the loss of control over Tehran, the loss of control over Isfahan, or even today's incident which struck very important buildings for the Iranian regime, this clearly shows you that things can very quickly change if there is internal movement. Consequently, US President Donald Trump appears to be determined to play every card that can be used against the Iranian regime.